You've felt it, haven't you? That moment when everything inside you fractures, when the person whose soul seemed woven into yours suddenly turns away. Not just physically, energetically, like they severed something sacred, something you thought was written in the stars, bound by forces greater than either of you. And in that shattering moment, you wonder, can they actually do that? Can one soul break a contract that was made before time, before bodies, before this lifetime even began? Your heart races with the question. Your chest aches with the possibility, because if they can walk away from something this divine, what does that mean about everything you felt, everything you knew, everything your soul recognized as truth? You lie awake at night, feeling the absence like a phantom limb. You reach for the connection in meditation, in prayer, in those quiet moments when the world falls away. And sometimes you feel nothing. Just empty space where that frequency used to live. And the fear creeps in. The fear that whispers, maybe they chose differently. Maybe their free will overrode destiny. Maybe you're alone in this sacred knowing, holding a contract that only has one signature now. You've searched for answers everywhere. You've asked the universe, your guides, your own exhausted heart. And what you're about to discover might shake everything you thought you understood about soul contracts, free will, and the twin flame journey. Because the truth is far more complex and far more beautiful than you've been told. If this resonates deep in your bones, if you've felt this exact fear of a broken contract, I need you to do something. Drop a comment below and simply type, "I trust the divine plan, even when I cannot see it." Claim that energy right now. And if these transmissions speak to the deepest parts of your soul, subscribe so you never miss the guidance that's meant specifically for you. Because you're here for a reason. This message found you at the exact moment you needed it. Let's start with what you need to hear first. That fear you're carrying, that terror that they somehow broke the contract and left you holding a sacred agreement alone, it's valid. Your nervous system is responding to what feels like the ultimate abandonment. Not just by a person, but by destiny itself. When you feel a twin flame connection, when you recognize that mirror, that frequency, that inexplicable knowing, your soul remembers something your human mind cannot fully grasp. It remembers agreements made in realms beyond this one. And when that person walks away, when they choose a different path, a different partner, a different life entirely, it feels like a cosmic betrayal. But here's what's really happening beneath the surface of that pain. Soul contracts, especially twin flame contracts, are not written the way human contracts are written. They're not signed documents with terms and conditions that can be violated or voided. They're energetic imprints. They're frequency agreements. They're evolutionary commitments that exist in a dimension where time doesn't move linearly and choice doesn't function the way we understand it here. Your twin flame cannot break the contract in the way you fear, but they can delay it. They can resist it. They can run from it so hard and so fast that it looks, from your human perspective, like they've completely abandoned the agreement. What you're experiencing right now is not the end of the contract. It's the activation of a clause you didn't know existed. The separation clause, the awakening through absence clause. The clause that says, sometimes the only way two souls can fulfill their agreement is by being apart. Because twin flame contracts are not primarily about union. They're about evolution. They're about becoming. They're about each soul reaching a frequency of wholeness that can only be achieved through the exact journey they're walking, including, and especially, the excruciating parts. Have you noticed how the pain of this separation has cracked you open in ways nothing else ever could? How it's forced you to look at wounds you've been avoiding your entire life? How it's brought you to your knees in surrender, in rage, in grief, in every emotion you've tried to keep contained? That's not punishment. That's the contract fulfilling itself. Your twin flame's role in this phase is not to be with you. It's to be the catalyst that breaks you open so thoroughly that you have no choice but to rebuild yourself from the soul up. And here's the truth that might sting at first, but will eventually set you free. He didn't break the contract when he walked away. He activated it. Every step he takes away from you is a step deeper into the journey that was always meant to unfold. Because his soul knew, even if his conscious mind didn't, that you would never do the deep work, the real work, the soul-level transformation if he stayed. You would keep focusing on him, on the connection, on making it work, on healing him, understanding him, waiting for him to be ready. And while you focused outward, your own inner temple would remain unbuilt. The twin flame contract is not a promise of partnership. It's a promise of transformation. It's an agreement that says, I will be whatever you need me to be for your soul's evolution, even if that means being the one who leaves. Even if that means being the villain in your story for a while. Even if that means breaking your heart so completely that you finally turn inward and meet yourself at the deepest level. But something shifts when you stop asking, why did he break the contract? And start asking, what is this contract actually asking of me? Because that's when you realize he's not the one who broke anything. You both are exactly where you're supposed to be. He's in his underworld, facing his own demons, his own wounds, his own resistance to love. And you're in. Yours, the contract doesn't require you to be in the same place at the same time. It requires you to both become whole. Separately. So that if and when union comes, it's not two halves desperately clinging to each other. It's two complete souls choosing each other from overflow, not from need. Deep inside, he knows. Even if he's built walls so thick that no light seems to penetrate, even if he's convinced himself that the connection wasn't real, that you weren't the one, that he's happier now without the intensity. His soul knows. And his soul is doing exactly what it agreed to do before either of you took bodies. It's learning, it's growing. It's being dismantled and reconstructed. The masculine journey is different from yours, where you might dive deep into feeling, into spiritual seeking, into understanding the connection. He often has to go through complete ego death first. He has to have everything he thought would make him happy, everything he ran toward when he ran from you, and he has to watch it all crumble. Not as punishment, but as awakening. The masculine often cannot awaken through seeking. He awakens through loss. Through the complete collapse of the false structures he built his identity on. Through the moment when success feels empty, when other relationships feel hollow, when achievement brings no lasting satisfaction. That's when the cracks form. That's when the light you've been holding starts to seep through his defenses. Not because you're chasing him, not because you're sending energy or doing rituals or trying to manifest him back, but because you've become a frequency, a living embodiment of the truth he's been running from, and frequency cannot be ignored forever. This is why the journey requires your separation, because you have your own becoming to attend to. For so long, perhaps lifetimes, you've defined yourself through relationship, through being the healer, the giver, the one who loves harder, who stays longer, who believes more deeply. You've made yourself small to make others comfortable. You've abandoned yourself to keep others close. And the twin flame contract said enough. It said, this lifetime, you will learn to choose yourself first. You will learn that your worth is not determined by whether someone stays or goes. You will learn to build a temple inside yourself so sacred, so whole, so complete, that union becomes a choice, not a need. Have you felt the shift starting to happen inside you? The moments when the grief transforms into something else. Not happiness necessarily, but a deeper knowing. A settling into your own power. A recognition that you're not waiting anymore. You're becoming. There are days when you don't think about him at all. Days when your own life, your own growth, your own purpose feels more compelling than the connection. And then the guilt comes. The fear that if you stop focusing on him, on the connection, on the possibility of reunion, you're somehow breaking your part of the contract, but that's exactly backwards. Your part of the contract is not to wait, it's to become. It's to rise so fully into your own divine feminine power that you become the frequency of union itself. Not union with him specifically, union with yourself, union with the divine, union with your own soul's purpose. And when you embody that, when you stop performing spirituality and start living it, when you stop seeking validation and start generating it from within, the entire energetic dynamic shifts. Because the twin flame contract is not about two people. It's about two frequencies. And frequency doesn't care about human timelines or human resistance. It simply aligns when it's ready. But something you need to understand about soul contracts, they're not rigid. They're responsive. They're living agreements that shift and evolve based on the choices both souls make. When your twin flame chose to walk away, the contract didn't break. It branched. It created new pathways, new possibilities, new timelines. In some of those timelines, you reunite in this lifetime. In others, you complete your individual journeys, and the reunion happens in a different form, a different dimension, a different lifetime. And here's what might be hard to accept. Both outcomes fulfill the contract, because the contract's primary goal is not your happiness, it's your evolution. And sometimes evolution requires you to release the outcome entirely. This is the most advanced stage of the twin flame journey, the stage where you stop trying to make it happen, where you stop analyzing every synchronicity, every dream, every intuitive hit for signs that he's coming back, where you stop living in the future, in the when we're finally together fantasy, and you start living fully in the present, in your own life, in your own body, in your own purpose. This is when the magic happens, not because you're using some manifestation technique, but because you've finally stopped abandoning yourself the way you feared he abandoned you. And here's the sacred paradox. The moment you stop needing the contract to unfold in a specific way, The moment you release him from the role of the one who completes me, that's when the contract can actually fulfill itself. Because you've done what you came here to do, you've become whole. You've reclaimed your sovereignty. You've built your inner temple, and from that place of wholeness, union becomes possible. Not guaranteed, but possible. Because now you're no longer calling him from woundedness. You're not sending out the frequency of, "I need you to come back so I can feel complete." You're emanating, "I am complete." And if our paths are meant to cross again, they will. And if not, I am still whole. Can you feel the difference in those two frequencies? The first one, the desperate one, actually pushes the masculine further away. Because the masculine, especially the divine masculine, cannot come toward neediness. It triggers every abandonment wound, every fear of being trapped, every terror of not being enough. But the second frequency, the sovereign one, it creates space. It invites without demanding. It holds the door open without standing in the doorway blocking the exit. And that's the frequency that allows him to finally turn around and look at what he left behind. But here's what you need to hear, even if he never turns around, even if this lifetime doesn't include the physical reunion you've dreamed of, you have not failed. The contract has not been broken. Because the deepest purpose of the twin flame contract is not to create a romantic partnership. It's to birth you into your highest self. It's to activate codes within you that could only be activated through this specific connection, this specific pain, this specific journey. You are not the same person you were before you met him. You never will be again. And that transformation, that death and rebirth, that's the contract fulfilling itself. Every tear you've cried has watered seeds within you. Every night you've spent in confusion has cleared old programming. Every moment you felt abandoned has taught you to never abandon yourself again. This is not consolation. This is the actual work. The twin flame journey is not a love story. It's an initiation, and initiations are brutal. They're meant to be, because you cannot step into your divine power while still clinging to your small self. And the small self will not release its grip voluntarily. It has to be pried open, and nothing pries it open quite like twin flame love and twin flame loss. So what actually happens when one twin flame tries to break the soul contract? The universe responds, not with punishment, but with redirection. Suddenly, the path they thought would bring happiness becomes complicated. The relationship they ran to starts revealing cracks. The career they focused on instead starts feeling empty. The distractions stop working. And they start feeling a pull they cannot name, cannot explain, cannot ignore. It might not happen immediately. The universe is patient, but it is also persistent. And soul contracts, especially ones as significant as twin flames, do not simply dissolve because the human ego decides it's too hard. He might go years thinking he's moved on, thinking he made the right choice, thinking the connection was just an intense infatuation that he's now mature enough to see clearly. And then something happens. A song, a scent, a dream so vivid he wakes up with tears on his face. A sudden, inexplicable knowing that he left something essential behind. The contract doesn't force him to come back, but it does not let him forget. It plants seeds that lie dormant until the soil of his consciousness is ready. And those seeds will sprout, maybe not on your timeline, maybe not in the way you imagine, but they will sprout. And while those seeds are gestating in him, what is your role? To tend your own garden, to plant your own seeds, to create a life so full, so rich, so aligned with your soul's purpose that you're not sitting by the window waiting for him to return. Because here's another truth the twin flame journey teaches: you cannot be the lighthouse and the shipwrecked sailor at the same time. You cannot be drowning in your own pain and also be the frequency that guides him home. You have to choose, and the contract is asking you to choose yourself, to save yourself, to become your own lighthouse. This is what it means to hold the divine feminine frequency. Not to wait passively, not to pine endlessly, but to become so rooted in your own power, so clear in your own worth, so aligned with your own divinity that you become a force of nature. And forces of nature do not beg, they do not chase. They simply exist in their full power, and everything around them responds. The wind does not convince the trees to bend. The ocean does not persuade the shore to meet it. They simply are. And in their being, everything aligns. When you embody this, when you stop performing the role of the wounded twin and start living as the sovereign queen, the entire energetic field between you shifts. He might not consciously know why, but he'll feel it. He'll feel the absence of your energy chasing him. He'll feel the void where your need used to be, and that void will terrify him at first. Because as long as you were chasing, he could run. As long as you were waiting, he could delay. But when you stop, when you truly stop and turn your energy toward your own life, he loses his role. And that's when his own reckoning begins. But you cannot do this as a strategy. You cannot embody sovereignty as a manipulation to get him back. The universe sees through that immediately. You have to genuinely release him. You have to genuinely choose yourself. Not as a means to an end, but as the end itself. You have to reach the point where you honestly mean it when you say, I release you. I release this outcome. I release my attachment to how this unfolds. And I choose me, fully, completely, with or without you. That's the frequency that changes everything. Not because it's a magic spell that brings him back, but because it's the frequency of your own liberation. And here's what happens in that liberation. You start to see the contract from a higher perspective. You start to understand that maybe, just maybe, the greatest gift he ever gave you was leaving. Because in his absence, you found yourself. In the space he left behind, you built a cathedral. In the silence where his voice used to be, you finally heard your own. And you realized that the contract was never about him staying. It was about you discovering that you are whole without him, that you are divine without him, that you are enough, completely and utterly enough, exactly as you are. This doesn't mean the love disappears. Twin flame love doesn't work that way. It's not conditional. It's not based on proximity or reciprocation. It simply is. But the attachment can transform. The need can dissolve. The desperation can alchemize into peace. And from that peace, you can hold space for whatever unfolds without being destroyed by it. You can love him and release him simultaneously. You can honor the connection and live your life fully. You can believe in the soul contract and also accept that its fulfillment might look nothing like you imagined. There's a stage in the journey where you stop asking, when will he come back? And start asking, who am I becoming through this? That shift in question is everything. It's the difference between being a victim of the journey and being a conscious participant in it. It's the difference between waiting for your life to start when he returns and realizing your life is happening right now, with or without him. And this is not settling. This is not giving up. This is maturity. This is sovereignty. This is the divine feminine in her full power, not defined by the masculine's choices, but rooted in her own eternal worth. The soul contract between twin flames includes a clause that most people don't talk about. It says if one of us is not ready, the other will become ready enough for both. Not to carry the burden, but to hold the frequency, to anchor the light, to be the example of what's possible when you stop running from yourself. And that's what you're doing right now, whether you realize it or not. Every day you choose healing over bitterness, you're holding the frequency. Every moment you choose your own growth over obsessing about his return, you're fulfilling the contract. Every time you stand in your truth, even when it's terrifying, you're becoming the version of yourself that the contract always knew you could be. And from that place, reunion is not something you need. It's something you're available for. There's a massive difference. Need is contraction. Availability is expansion. Need says, I cannot be whole without you. Availability says, I am whole and there's space for you if you're ready. One repels, the other magnetizes, and you cannot fake availability. You cannot pretend to be whole while secretly dying inside, desperately hoping he'll come back. The universe reads frequency, not words. Your energy tells the truth even when your mouth lies. So if you're wondering whether he broke the contract, whether you're holding onto something that's already dissolved, whether you're a fool for still believing, let me tell you what I know. The fact that you're still feeling the connection, still sensing the pull, still having dreams and synchronicities and moments of inexplicable knowing, that's not delusion. That's the contract still active, still alive, still unfolding. But it's unfolding in a way that requires you to let go of control, to surrender the timeline, to release the how, and to trust that if this connection is meant to come into physical union in this lifetime, no amount of his resistance or your fear can stop it. And if it's not meant to manifest that way, no amount of your effort or his awakening will force it. This is the ultimate lesson of the twin flame journey, the one that every soul must eventually face, no matter how much they resist it, no matter how long they try to control or manipulate the outcome. Surrender. But let's be absolutely clear about what this means. Because the word surrender has been so misunderstood, so distorted, so diluted in spiritual communities that it's lost its true power. This is not passive surrender, where you simply give up and resign yourself to a life of longing and incompleteness. This is not defeated surrender, where you wave the white flag because you're exhausted from fighting and you've simply run out of energy to care anymore. This is not the surrender of someone who has lost hope, who has accepted that their dreams will never manifest, who has settled into bitter acceptance of a reality they never wanted. No, this is empowered surrender. This is conscious surrender. This is the kind of surrender that actually requires more strength, more courage, more spiritual maturity than holding on ever did. This is the kind of surrender that says, I trust the divine plan more than I trust my human understanding. even when that plan looks nothing like what I wanted, even when it's taking me through valleys so dark I can barely see my own hand in front of my face. This is the surrender that says, I trust that my soul knew exactly what it was doing when it signed this contract before I ever took my first breath in this lifetime. My soul knew the pain that was coming. My soul knew the heartbreak that would unfold. My soul knew the nights I would spend crying, questioning, wondering if I could survive this. And my soul said yes anyway, because it also knew the transformation that would come from it. This is the surrender that declares with unwavering faith, I trust that everything, every single painful moment that has brought me to my knees, every confusing twist that has left me disoriented and questioning my sanity, every heartbreaking turn that has made me wonder if love is even real, is exactly as it should be for my highest evolution, for my soul's greatest expansion, for my ultimate awakening into who I truly am beneath all the conditioning, all the wounds, all the false beliefs I've carried about myself and about love. This is the surrender that doesn't come from weakness, but from a deep, profound knowing that there is an intelligence at work here that is far greater than your logical mind can comprehend, far wiser than your ego can understand, far more loving than your wounded heart can currently perceive. When you reach that place of trust, when you finally stop fighting the current and allow yourself to be carried by the river of divine orchestration, something absolutely miraculous happens. And this is what so many people don't realize, what they can't understand until they experience it themselves. The pain doesn't disappear. Let's be honest about that. The ache doesn't suddenly vanish. The longing doesn't evaporate into thin air. You don't wake up one morning completely indifferent to this person who has touched your soul in ways no one else ever has or ever will. But something profound shifts in your relationship to that pain. It transforms. It alchemizes. It transmutes from something that destroys you into something that refines you. It becomes sacred. It becomes holy. It becomes a spiritual initiation rather than just emotional suffering. It becomes purposeful rather than random cruelty from an uncaring universe. It becomes the very thing, the exact catalyst, the precise instrument that's cracking you open, breaking through the walls you've built around your heart, shattering the protective armor you've worn for lifetimes, so that you can receive more love, more light, more truth, more divine frequency than you ever thought possible, more than your previous version of yourself could have ever held or integrated or embodied. And something else shifts too. You start to see him differently, not through the lens of victim and perpetrator, not through the filter of abandonment and rejection, not through the story of the one who loved and the one who left. You begin to see him not as the one who broke your heart, leaving it in pieces scattered across the floor of your life, but as the one who broke you open, who cracked through the shell you didn't even know you were living inside, who shattered the glass ceiling of what you thought love could be. You begin to see him not as the one who abandoned the contract, who failed in his role, who couldn't rise to the occasion of this sacred connection, but as the one who loved you enough, on a soul level that transcends human comprehension, to play the role that would catalyze your greatest transformation, even knowing that role would make him the villain in your story, even knowing you might hate him for it, even knowing he might lose you forever in the process. Can you hold that perspective, even for a moment? Can you sit with that possibility without immediately rejecting it, because it challenges everything your wounded ego wants to believe? Can you open yourself to the radical idea that maybe, just maybe, his leaving was the most loving thing he could have done for your soul's evolution? Not because he consciously chose it from that place of awakened awareness, not because he sat down and logically decided that leaving you would be the most spiritually beneficial action he could take. Most likely, he was operating from fear, from his own wounds, from his own patterns and conditioning and unhealed trauma. But because his soul knew, his higher self understood, the part of him that exists beyond this three-dimensional reality, beyond the limitations of his human consciousness, beyond his ego and his fears and his resistance, that part of him knew exactly what it was doing. His soul knew you would never become who you're meant to be if he stayed. His soul recognized that you would remain comfortable, complacent, stuck in patterns that felt safe, but were actually keeping you small. His soul knew you would keep making him your focus, pouring all your energy into him, into the connection, into trying to make it work, into managing his emotions and his fears and his healing. His soul knew you would keep making him your purpose, organizing your entire life around his presence or absence, measuring your worth by his attention or lack thereof, defining your value by whether he chose you or not. His soul knew you would keep making him your reason for existing, the center of your universe, the sun around which your entire world revolved. And the contract, the sacred agreement your souls made before entering these bodies, before taking on these personalities, before forgetting who you really are, that contract required you to make yourself those things, to become your own focus, turning all that powerful energy and attention inward, finally giving to yourself what you've been trying to get from him. To become your own purpose, discovering the unique mission your soul came here to fulfill, the gifts you came to share, the light you came to shine that has nothing to do with being someone's partner. To become your own reason for existing, finding that unshakable sense of self-worth and self-love that doesn't depend on anyone else's validation or presence or choice. And so he left, and it felt like death. It felt like betrayal. It felt like the cruelest thing anyone had ever done to you. But he left not because he stopped loving you, not because that profound connection you felt was imaginary or one-sided or less significant than you believed it to be. He left not because the connection wasn't real, wasn't powerful, wasn't the most intense and transformative experience of both your lives. He left not because he broke the contract, failed in his spiritual assignment, or proved himself unworthy of this sacred connection, but because the contract required the breaking of you. The complete dismantling of the identity you had constructed, the ego structure you had built, the false self you had been performing for so long you forgot it wasn't really you. The contract required the dismantling of everything you thought you knew about love, every fairy tale you were taught, every romantic ideal you absorbed from movies and songs and stories, every belief about how love should look and feel and unfold. The contract demanded the destruction of every codependent pattern you learned in childhood Every abandonment wound you've been carrying since you were too young to understand what was happening. Every belief that your worth comes from being chosen by someone else, from being wanted, from being pursued, from being claimed, from being made to feel special by another person's desire for you. He left so you could finally, after all these years of seeking it outside yourself, choose yourself. Choose your own healing. Choose your own growth. Choose your own happiness. Choose your own wholeness. Choose to become the person you've always had the potential to be, but never had the space or the necessity to become while you were focused on him. And now you're here. In the aftermath of the storm that tore through your life, in the rebuilding phase, surrounded by the rubble of who you used to be, the broken pieces of the life you thought you were going to live. In the sacred space between who you were and who you're becoming, in that liminal space, that threshold, that void where the old has died, but the new hasn't fully birthed yet. And you have a choice. You always have a choice, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when it feels like you're just surviving, just getting through each day. You have a choice about what you do with this experience, how you interpret it, what meaning you assign to it, who you become because of it. You can spend this time bitter, replaying every moment, analyzing every conversation, torturing yourself with questions that have no answers. You can spend this time resentful, building a case against him in your mind, collecting evidence of how he wronged you, nursing your wounds like precious possessions you're afraid to release. You can spend this time waiting for him to realize what he lost, checking his social media, hoping he's miserable, fantasizing about the day he comes back apologizing, living in a holding pattern where your real life can't begin until he returns. Or you can spend this time becoming so magnificent, so radiant, so completely and utterly whole that whether he returns or not becomes almost irrelevant. Not because you stop loving him, not because the connection dies, not because you force yourself to stop caring through sheer willpower, but because you'll have gained something far more valuable than his presence, something no one can ever take from you, something that doesn't depend on anyone else's choices or feelings or readiness. You'll have gained yourself, your true self, your authentic self, your divine self. The you that was always there underneath the conditioning, underneath the wounds, underneath the false beliefs and the survival patterns, and the masks you wore to be accepted and loved. This is not to say you won't reunite. This is not a message of giving up on the connection or accepting that it's over forever. This is not to say the contract is void, that the twin flame journey was just a lesson and now it's complete and you should move on and forget about him. This is to say that the contract's deepest purpose is already being fulfilled. Right now, in this very moment, not in some future reunion, not when he finally wakes up, not when you finally come back together in perfect union, but right now, in your pain, in the tears you cry when no one is watching, in the moments you're sure you can't take another step, but somehow you do. Right now, in your growth, in every time you choose yourself over the fantasy of him, in every boundary you set, in every pattern you break, in every wound you heal. Right now, in your transformation, in the death of who you were and the birth of who you're becoming, in the shedding of every false layer until only truth remains, you are becoming the version of yourself that the contract always intended. the version that knows her worth, the version that doesn't abandon herself for anyone, the version that loves from overflow, not from emptiness, the version that is so full of her own light that she becomes a beacon rather than someone searching for light in others. And he is on his own path, walking his own journey through the darkness, facing his own demons, confronting his own shadows, doing his own work, whether he's conscious of it or not, whether he's calling it a spiritual journey or just trying to survive his own inner chaos, whether he even remembers you or thinks of you or understands what you shared. And if and when both paths lead back to each other, if and when the universe orchestrates that reunion, if and when both of you have done enough of your individual work to come together in a healthy way, it will not be the reunion of two broken halves desperately trying to complete each other. Two wounded people seeking healing in each other's arms. Two incomplete souls trying to fill their voids with each other's presence. It will be the meeting of two whole souls, two sovereign beings, two people who have done their work and found themselves and healed their wounds, choosing each other from freedom, not from need, from desire, not from desperation, from consciousness, not from compulsion, from wholeness, not from emptiness. So, beloved, let this be your reminder today and every day when you doubt, when you question, when you wonder if you're fooling yourself or wasting your time or believing in something that will never happen. The contract is not broken. It hasn't failed. It hasn't fallen apart. It's breaking you open, cracking through every defense, every wall, every protection mechanism you've ever built. It's not abandoned. It hasn't been discarded or forgotten or proven false. It's activating you, turning on capacities within you that were dormant, awakening gifts you didn't know you had, calling forth the highest version of yourself that has been waiting for this exact catalyst to emerge. And you are not alone in this. You are not the only one going through this excruciating process. You are not the only one who feels like they're losing their mind. Every twin flame walking this path, in every corner of the world, is feeling what you're feeling, experiencing their own version of this death and rebirth. Every twin flame is questioning what you're questioning, wondering if they're interpreting signs that aren't there, if they're holding onto something they should let go of, if they're delusional for believing in a connection that everyone around them says they should forget. Every twin flame is wondering if they're crazy for still believing in something that looks, from the outside, from the perspective of people who haven't experienced this connection, like it's completely fallen apart, like it's obviously over, like it's clearly time to move on. But you're not crazy, you're not delusional, you're not fooling yourself. You're awake. You're seeing beyond the three-dimensional reality into the truth of what's happening on a soul level. And awakening is not gentle. It's not the peaceful, blissful process that spiritual Instagram posts make it seem. It's not pretty. It's not aesthetic. It's not the spiritual bypass that social media makes it look like, where you just meditate and journal and do yoga, and suddenly you're enlightened and everything is perfect. It's raw, it's messy, it's uncomfortable, it's real. It's a complete death of who you were, of every identity you clung to, of every belief system you operated from, so that who you truly are can finally emerge from the ashes, so that your authentic self can finally take up space in your life, so that your soul can finally live through you instead of being suppressed by all the conditioning and programming you've accumulated. Ask yourself one final time, with complete honesty, with no spiritual bypassing, with no pretending you're further along than you are. Am I willing to trust this process even when I cannot see the outcome, even when there's no guarantee of reunion, even when every logical part of my mind says I should give up and move on? Am I willing to become whole on my own, not as a strategy to get him back, not as a manipulation technique where I heal myself, so he'll finally be attracted to my energy and return, but as the actual point of this entire journey, as the real reason our souls orchestrated this connection in the first place? Am I ready to stop waiting for my life to begin when he returns and start living it fully right now? Embracing this present moment, creating joy and meaning and purpose with or without him, building a life I love instead of a life I'm just tolerating until he comes back. Because the moment you answer yes to those questions, genuinely yes from the depths of your being, not the yes that's secretly a bargaining chip with the universe, not the yes that's actually a strategy to make reunion happen, not the yes that's still attached to a specific outcome, but the yes that comes from your soul, from a place of true surrender and trust and readiness to embrace whatever unfolds. Everything shifts. The energy changes. The contract moves into its final phase. The universe can finally give you what you've been asking for because you're finally ready to receive it. And whether that includes physical reunion or not, whether he comes back or you meet someone even better, whether you end up together or you realize you've outgrown the need for that connection, you will have fulfilled your part. You will have completed your side of the agreement. You will have become the divine feminine in her full power, no longer seeking masculine energy outside herself to feel complete. Sovereign, ruling your own life, making your own choices, standing in your own authority. Whole, complete within yourself, not needing anyone else to fill any void or heal any wound. Free, liberated from the patterns and wounds and beliefs that kept you trapped. Finally able to love from a place of fullness rather than emptiness. Finally able to choose rather than need. Finally able to be yourself rather than who you thought you had to be loved. Tell me in the comments, have you felt this shift from waiting to becoming? What changed in you when you finally chose yourself? Your story might be exactly what another soul needs to hear today to keep going, to keep trusting, to keep believing that the contract is still unfolding exactly as it should.